now seems to be a great time to check back in on Ethereum after last week's analysis. It has come down to the major area that we were looking at, about 1530-ish low thus far, and what to essentially kind of expect from here as far as these statistics go, and a few, well, I guess signals and statistics kind of go along with that. Anyways, other than that, I want to welcome you back to the Krown Crypto channel. It's a nice little Saturday morning, very, very slow Saturday morning, very slow week, just again, basically feels like, and so I think we can just jump right in the charts and get into the action for the day. So this was a chart that we were looking at, or one of the charts that we were looking at, not yesterday, but last week for Ethereum. And in this case, we were looking at a likely move back onto the downside of this long-term, very, very long-term trend line. Again, I'm not a humongous fan of trend lines. I think most of them are just imaginary lines in space and time on, but, but in this case, you know, it did look like, generally speaking, it wanted to come down, and that'd be kind of a logical area because not only is it going to be lining up with that, but it also is lining up with the 382 fib from the ultimate high of the summer rally in April to the ultimate low of what we did see back in June, actually, of 2022, which is where Ethereum did put in its low thus far. It did not make new lows, of course, on the October/November of 2022 dump. So in this case, it is still holding this long-term structure, and to be fair, you know, it would mark off the boundaries for an ascending triangle, which is, you know, the beginnings typically of an, you know, of a major uptrend. I mean, those are higher lows, right? Anyways, in this case, it has officially come down exactly to that region, and thus far holding. So as far as this goes, I mean, this is still looking like it is a potential. It is a possibility. The LARP line's kind of marking this one off as well. But what essentially would we expect from here if this one is going to hold true? Because that's, you know, the most important part when looking at highly esteemed patterns like this. And what we'd expect to see is we'd expect to see probably the next week or two continue to kind of wick off this region right here. Wick off. Yeah, wick it off, baby. Wick me off. I just wicked off this morning and wicking off right now with Ethereum. Wick off this trend line a few more times and kind of grind its way sideways and up. I don't necessarily think that this LARP line over here is like going to be like super accurate. Not that they're like intended to be, but something of that nature. In fact, maybe I just redraw it now that we're kind of zoomed in here, and you know, maybe it does blah 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 blah, and then blah 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 blah, you know, something like that. Exactly with that sound in the background too. So if you hear that sound, get ready to bust. Anyways, yeah, so, you know, that is still holding up, and fair enough, you know, that is relevant for right now. Anyways, we can move on to the next chart now. This one based off of the weekly stochastic oscillator, which we do see getting into the critical zone, I should say the critical bearish control zone, or just critical bearish zone here, for the first time basically since December of 2022. This has happened at 9 prior times in Ethereum's history, the full history that is, if we go all the way back to the genesis. And of those 9 times, 2 have been failures. And when I say failures, they were epic failures, like epically nasty failures that I will show you right now, actually. One of them was back on over here before Ethereum did put in its low in May of 2022, hit that region, and then red dildo party. All the way down, all the way down. It doesn't even look like that much on this particular chart, but from wick to, yeah, from open to wick, 50% move, you know, we're talking about. That is significant for sure. Or about a 50% move right there. And then the other time that this one did not work out as well, at least for a short-term bounce, was, where was it? I know it's right here. Yeah, it's exactly right here. In 2018, literally right before the really nasty portion of this downfall, coming all the way down 82% from that region. So all of that was done while the weekly stochastic oscillator was in the critical zone right here. So just because it's down there, it's not like a green dildo party confirmation. It is a little more likely, at least for a short-term bounce. But you know, if it does fail, it's going to fail spectacularly. So that's what I'm trying to say. So how do you know that it's going to fail? Well, if you do see Ethereum start to close below basically 1530, you know, that 382 fib, and also kind of the wick lows of this, you know, of this consolidation thus far, yeah, that's going to be problematic and very likely a good indication that we probably will see a catastrophic culling of Ethereum much further to the downside. But for all the other times, they have signaled either significant upside or at least a bounce, even within the context of the emerging bear markets like we saw back and over here in 2018. You know, again, this one doesn't look like much, but from signal given to next high, that was a 129% move. So it is actually, or at least in my opinion it is. It depends how much of a degenerate you are to agree with that or not. not. Even this one over here, some people might say that this one's not that impressive. It's not super impressive, but it certainly did give you a chance. I mean, there's a 35% move. It's a 35% move. Not bad at all. And then of course you can see all the rest of them over here. Pretty standard within that case. So Ethereum getting this, or sorry, the weekly stochastic also getting this region right here. More than likely a sign, a potential bounce, kind of playing hand in hand with the imaginary lines over here, and also a 382 fib. Fair enough in these cases. And by the way, I always people take some people I should say take great offense whenever I talk about imaginary lines. Look, I know that some of them work, of course, yeah. And if it works for you, that's great, that's amazing, that's awesome. I'm just having a joke here on YouTube. Relax, man, relax. If it works, you don't need to convince me otherwise for it to work. If it actually works, right? Anyways, sweet. Okay, let's now go into the daily HPDR indicator here. I actually want to show a slightly different look on the daily HPDR, going with the bands indicator right here. So the bands is actually going to be sort of the next evolution of the HPDR. Caretaker has, I believe, basically finished it as of now. We're getting prepared to make an offering for it, but it'll take time, obviously. So I'm hoping like around... yeah, probably around end of month, I'd guess, is kind of what we're slated for right now. But if we're looking at the bands, they calculate the ranges slightly differently. They calculate them they calculate them in a more updated way. I don't have a good way of explaining this as of right now because actually I'm rather new to it myself, and I need to go back into Caretaker's explanations. But it's a little more updated in this case, and compared to the HPDR itself, which is a conglomeration of, well, swaths of past price action. Anyways, in this case, if we do look at it from this narrative, or sorry, from this look, it does kind of fit that prior narrative where the 50% of historic returns range lows for the bands is actually coming in basically around this week's low, 1535-ish. So that is still an area of interest, I would say. Now, if we go to the regular HPDR, yeah, this one is showing the bottom side of the current range significantly lower, and that's probably where I would be looking if Ethereum does break lower, basically. So that would be significant to know as well. In the interim, how would we know that Ethereum is essentially again going to maybe pull itself up by the bootstraps here and continue sideways and up? Well, I would say the first major indication or the first major confirmation I'd be looking for is back above the average of the range, which is about 1665-ish region. Back above there, okay, this starts to look very likely, very, very likely, this sort of LARP line over here. But until then, this is kind of the point of, it's the point of maximum financial opportunity, really. I mean, because it's either the low or getting ready for likely a catastrophic dump. Like I said, if it dumps from here, it's probably going to dump a lot more. We haven't really spoken about like what the areas of interest to the downside would be if it does dump more, but the 50% retracement here would be an obvious one at about 1380-ish region. Also kind of around that March dump that we did see earlier this year. That'd be a good bounce area. Not necessarily sure if I'd call that a low. The next sort of major one, I'd be putting it somewhere around about 1250 or so at the 618. So those would be kind of like the next two major macro targets, if you will. Anyways, moving on to the last thing here. I just want to go over some daily statistics for Ethereum just to show. In this case, we can see that Saturday, which is today, a little bit more on the bearish side, if you will. 43.75% have closed positively throughout the full history of Ethereum, giving it a slight edge towards the bear odds there. In the case that it has closed negative, the average loss has been about 1.67% compared to about 1.5% gain if it does close positively. Just kind of looking across the board here, similar statistics actually to Bitcoin in reference to Tuesday, which is a more bullish day, but in other cases, like we do see that Wednesday is a lot different. In fact, Wednesday is like Bitcoin's Thursday. So that's kind of the most bearish day, traditionally speaking, for Ethereum. Although it's just a highly volatile day, actually. It's actually the most volatile day now that I look at it right there. So yeah, that's essentially what I'm looking at right now. I know that there's news coming in about the SEC and grayscale and stuff like that, and perhaps, that plays hand in hand with this over here. But as you can see, the setup is there. And so this is kind of what's trading all about, in my opinion, in the sense that, hey, you have an obvious setup in front of your face. There are statistics that go alongside of that. There are no certainties, obviously, but the stakes in this case. and I suspect that this one will get moving actually before end of month here. We're in the second week of October. How many more weeks do we have? Let me just double check. 1, 2. Yeah, about 2. This one very likely does confirm or deny, one direction before end of month. Like basically, if Ethereum fails to break down before the end of the month, below this 1530-ish region, yeah, I'm gonna start to really lean in towards bullishness. But if it is gonna break down, I do think that it very likely happens before the end of the month here. So that is a good place for me to be leaving off. As always, I want to be wishing you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Sunday for some Bitcoin action, some fun Bitcoin action actually, as there is plenty to discuss over there. All right, take care.